The garage in your house might be the most expensive mistake you'll ever make. Not the mortgage, not the car sitting inside it. The garage itself. The square footage, the driveway, the zoning, the whole assumption that you need a dedicated room in your home just to store a machine that sits idle 23 hours a day. Elon Musk said it out loud at a Tesla event, and most people laughed it off as another one of his wild predictions. But when you follow the money, the manufacturing data, and the AI roadmap that Tesla has been quietly building for the last 3 years, the laugh gets stuck in your throat. Because the numbers don't lie, and right now the numbers are telling a story that almost nobody is reporting correctly. Let's start with what's actually happening on the ground, because the gap between the headlines and reality is enormous. As of early 2026, Tesla's Robotaxi service, built around a 2-door autonomous vehicle called the Cybercab, operates in exactly 2 cities, Austin and San Francisco. Safety drivers are still required for most rides. Wait times are long. The routing is limited to surface streets. Elon Musk promised unsupervised full self-driving by the end of 2025, covering half the U.S. population. That didn't happen. The goalpost moved. It always moves. And yet, Bank of America recently published an analysis stating that the robotaxi business now represents more than 50% of Tesla's entire market valuation, more than the energy division, more than everything else combined. So either Wall Street is completely delusional, or there is something buried inside Tesla's strategy that the skeptics are systematically missing. Here is the fact that almost no one is talking about. In February of 2026, Tesla produced its first Cybercab at Giga, Texas. By April, mass production had officially started. The target is 2 million units per year, with a potential ceiling of 4 million. At full capacity, Tesla's own projections show one Cybercab rolling off the line every 10 seconds. Every 10 seconds. For context, that is faster than any complex manufactured product in human history. The price point is under $30,000, which is less than the average new car sold in America today. And the projected operating cost once the fleet scales. Morgan Stanley estimates around 30 cents per mile. Wolf Research ran the numbers on what that means at scale, assuming 30% autonomous vehicle penetration and Tesla capturing 50% of that market at $1 per mile in revenue. The answer they got was $250 billion in annual robotaxi revenue by 2035, supporting approximately $2.75 trillion in equity value. That is not a typo. $2.75 trillion. Now let's talk about the competition, because this is where the story gets really interesting. Waymo, Google's autonomous vehicle unit, is considered the gold standard for robotaxi safety and credibility. They have years of operational data, billions in backing, and genuine regulatory approval in multiple cities. They are also, by every measurable cost metric, getting destroyed. A test conducted on an identical 2.25-mile route in Dallas showed a Tesla robotaxi fare of $6.15 versus Waymo's $13.93. That is a 56% cost advantage, and the gap is only going to widen as Tesla's fleet scales and its per-unit costs collapse. Waymo currently operates roughly 3,000 vehicles. ARK Invest projects that Tesla will surpass that number in approximately 3 months once the production ramp accelerates. And unlike Waymo, which depends on expensive sensor arrays and external mapping infrastructure, Tesla's system runs almost entirely on cameras and onboard AI, which is dramatically cheaper to produce and maintain at scale. That AI is the part of this story that most automotive journalists are under-equipped to explain. Tesla's full self-driving system has now accumulated 10 billion miles of real-world driving data, reached in May of 2026. In January of this year, the number was 7.1 billion. At the start of 2025, it was 3.6 billion. The fleet is currently logging 29 million miles per day. What that means in practice is that Tesla's AI is learning from a data set that no competitor can replicate. Because no competitor has a fleet of millions of customer-owned vehicles driving every single day and feeding information back to the mothership. The safety data that has emerged from this is striking. Under full self-driving supervision, Tesla records 1 collision per 5.3 million miles. The U.S. national average for human drivers is 1 collision per 660,000 miles. Tesla's AI is already 8 times safer than the average American driver, and it is getting better every single day. To process all of that data, Tesla needs compute power that would have seemed science fiction 5 years ago. The company added 16,000 H200 GPUs at Giga Texas in the second quarter of 2025 as part of a cluster they call Cortex. They abandoned their proprietary Dojo supercomputer project in August of 2025, calling it an evolutionary dead end, and pivoted entirely to partnering with Samsung for next-generation AI chips. The roadmap they have laid out goes AI 5 by 2026, then AI 6 for humanoid robots and data centers, then AI 7 for something that sounds completely insane until you realize that Elon Musk has the rockets to actually pull it off. Space-based AI computing with solar-powered data centers in orbit. Whether you think that is genius or madness depends entirely on whether you believe the man who already runs the world's leading private space company is capable of integrating that infrastructure with an autonomous transportation network. The evidence suggests you should not dismiss it. And here is where the Robotaxi story stops being about ride-hailing and starts being about something that would restructure the American economy at a foundational level. The Fremont factory in California, the plant that Toyota essentially handed to Tesla and that spent years building Model S and Model X sedans, is being converted. Not for another car. For Optimus, Tesla's humanoid robot. The target for that production line is 1 million units per year to start, with Austin planned to eventually run a line capable of 10 million units annually. Morgan Stanley estimates the total global market for humanoid robots at $5 trillion by 2050. Tesla controls the AI, the manufacturing process, the charging infrastructure, the fleet data, and now the humanoid labor force that could operate the warehouses, the charging stations, and eventually the entire logistics layer that sits underneath the Robotaxi network. Here is the question you should be sitting with right now. If autonomous vehicles reduce the need for personal car ownership, and if a monthly subscription for unlimited rides in your city costs less than your current car payment plus insurance plus fuel plus maintenance, at what point does keeping a personal vehicle become economically irrational? And if keeping a car becomes irrational, what happens to the garage? What happens to the driveway? What happens to the entire suburban design logic that was built around the assumption that every adult needs their own machine? Musk's comment about garages becoming obsolete was not a joke. It was a warning embedded in plain sight for anyone paying close enough attention. The honest answer is that we do not know exactly when this transition happens, because Tesla has missed its own deadlines repeatedly and the regulatory environment is unpredictable. California still has not issued Tesla a permit for fully driverless commercial operation. China is tightening regulations on over-the-air software updates for autonomous systems. Europe requires demonstrations of what regulators call anticipatory behavior before approving commercial deployment. The timeline Musk describes, very widespread U.S. coverage by the end of 2026, is almost certainly optimistic. The question is not whether it happens. The question is whether it happens in 3 years or in 8. What would you do differently if you knew your next car was your last one? Drop that in the comments, because the answer to that question is going to look very different depending on whether you live in a city, a suburb, or somewhere that a robotaxi will probably never reach in your lifetime. And if you want to be the person in the room who actually understands what is coming before it arrives, subscribe to Driven to Distraction. Because by the time this becomes front page news, the interesting part of the story will already be over.